Please welcome panel moderator, General Manager of Additive, GE Healthcare, Scott Rader.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you had a great rest break. And to quote Willy Wonka, we have so much time and so little to talk about. So reverse that, guys. So we're going to have to go quick. I'm joined here on stage, Jimmie Beacham from GE Healthcare, our Advanced Technology Manufacturing Center. We also have Dr. Jonathan Morris, interventional neuroradiologist from Mayo Clinic and overall 3D printing genius. And we also have John Heller, who was mentioned earlier, coming to us from Stryker, and you saw that in some of the keynotes earlier today. So guys, just a 30-second kind of introduction, how you got here and some of the coolest things you've seen 3D printed.
Great. Well, my name is Jimmie Beacham. Like you said, I lead the advanced manufacturing and additive strategy for GE Healthcare. I got the privilege of working with both the supply chain as well as the 50 different engineering teams across our organization. And I've been in GE for 19 years and been across the value stream, both engineering and manufacturing. And as far as the coolest thing I've seen, I think every day I see something cool that blows my mind, but I go back to the first real additive metal part I saw. That was a moment I'll never forget.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Jonathan Morris. People call me Jay. And I started 3D printing at the NIH in 2001 and have been at Mayo Clinic since 2002. And we started an in-house 3D printing lab about 12 years ago based on clinical needs, that we had really complex patients coming to Mayo Clinic and we needed multidisciplinary teams of surgeons to understand the anatomy in ways that weren't possible before. So what we've done over the last 12 years is basically put manufacturing inside the hospital and created teams of doctors, surgeons, engineers that work seamlessly to create an object, usually patient anatomy for preoperative simulation or patient matched things. And we've done that inside of the hospital. So how do you create manufacturing inside of a patient care setting, which brings all kinds of logistical challenges as well as time challenges?
John Heller with Stryker. I've got 25 years with Stryker, responsible for global supply chain. Essentially our internal and external manufacturing network. Internally, that's 40 manufacturing sites around the world. And as it relates to additive, I've had the privilege of being the executive sponsor of our additive manufacturing program for the last 15 years. So the incubation of the technology, the development of the process, and ultimately the commercialization of the products that Jason spoke about earlier today. And as far as the coolest product printed, I'd tell you it's the titanium base plate, which you can see downstairs. That was our first commercialized product 5 years ago. We have over 100,000 implantations of just that device. That's total knee replacement surgery done cementlessly because of additive manufacturing. So a really cool product that leads to a much better patient outcome.
Great. So we're not going to go through slides. We're not going to really spend a lot of time. I've asked each of these gentlemen who have joined me up here today to kind of bring home what is transforming and transformative from additive manufacturing healthcare. So Jimmie, we'll start with you. And
sure.
What are you seeing within GE Healthcare? Not only the different divisions of GE Healthcare, but what also can our customers expect to see out of GE's own adoption of additive manufacturing?
Sure. So as we heard throughout the morning already, additive is very transformative on product design. And what we're seeing now is as engineers realize that we could take the shackles away from subtractive technology, they're able to open their design space. And from a healthcare standpoint, when I think of medical devices such as CT scanners, X-ray units, all the way through our life science product line, customers should expect better performing products. Now that we're not held back by traditional methods, we're able to solve problems that customers have wanted for a long time. We're also seeing a great advancement in reliability, essentially taking away high-risk processes from today, transform them to an additive process is really a great enabler for longer life in our products. And then the third one is around, especially in life science, we're customizing our products for exactly what our customer needs. And that's going to help, especially our pharmaceutical customers, to speed up their journey in drug delivery.
Okay, Great. And then Jay, you mentioned point of care manufacturing. I know it's something that you've published a lot on.
It's kind of a buzz term that came out, not from us. We were kind of labeled by the manufacturing engineering community as point of care manufacturers. We just consider ourselves doctors. But you know, the benefit in our setting is we take images from CT and MRI scans and sometimes surface scanning, and then we have to take those images, put them in some sort of software, and bring something that was real, that became virtual, back to real. And instantly, from the first model to the model we printed yesterday, the same thing happens, that someone who's going to work in the physical space wants an object that's life-size, that feels real. We're not at the feel real part yet, but you know, they want an object that's where they work. So if I have a scoliosis surgeon and he has really complex scoliosis, or a vascular surgeon has really complex aortic dissections or dilatations, they work in a life-size, patient-specific way. And what you get with imaging is very confusing. You have to take clinical histories and physical exams and marry that with CT scans, MRI scans, PET scans, put it all in your brain, do the mental gymnastics it requires to make a life-size three-dimensional object, and then operate on that. And I think from the early days of us starting to now, what we've seen is that the surgeons constantly come back to us and ask us for more models, because it takes them to a place of increased confidence and a place where they know more before they enter the operating room, to where we're basically manufacturing virtual surgical plans now, where we manufacture using 3D printing, cutting guides, osteotomy guides, things that are screwed onto patients and used to make the surgeons more confident, very precise, and have better outcomes. And through that, we found reductions in overall cost, and reductions in operative time, reductions in mortality, reductions in ICU stay, hospital stay. So, I mean, we're all salaried at the Mayo Clinic. No doctor at Mayo gets paid any more for doing something extra. So our surgeons would have been very quick to say, this is not helpful. That's just some extra technology, good for you, we don't need it. But they kept coming back and saying, this is really helpful in a very meaningful way. So we had meaningful innovation. And if you come as a patient to Mayo Clinic, you expect to get the highest quality of care that you can anywhere in the globe. And that's what we focus on. And 3D printing has become the mainstream part of that.
So for some of the lay people in the audience, what are these components? You mentioned the word precision, right? And you've also published on case studies where precision surgery or precision healthcare. What are those components that you put together working and collaborating with clinicians in various disciplines, also with the patient, and from the radiology perspective?
Sure. And I think it's true of any industry. When you allow different disciplines to collaborate and don't put barriers up between them and don't silo them off, that you get meaningful innovation. And one of the problems with the American healthcare system at any academic center or center you go to is they're all siloed, meaning orthopedics is here, neurosurgery is here, radiation oncology is here, medicine is here. They all have budgetary constraints. They don't easily work to each other because they're all held to different standards and have different reward systems. And I think one of the nice things at Mayo is that we don't have that siloed effect. So when we started doing 3D printing for conjoined twins and then went into congenital scoliosis, then tumors, vascular, and it spread like wildfire, there wasn't a barrier there. We allowed surgeons, we put the 3D printing material in the hospital. So we wanted this to be where the doctors are, because you'd say, oh, it's just down the street, get on the bus, go see the machine. You know, it's not gonna happen. Our doctors are operating, they're busy, we need to do it where they are. And that's where the innovation came from, because I'm a neuroradiologist and I don't know what the needs of a thoracic surgeon are. But when you allow the thoracic surgeon to come up from the OR into your lab, see what the technology can do, they'll tell you their problem, they trust you as their radiologist, and then you incorporate, more recently, engineers into the clinical space. Now you have people who are experts in additive, experts in surgery, experts in anatomy and pathology, all coming around a patient with a clinical problem, saying, how can we treat this patient the best possible way? And I think when you allow all those people to interact meaningful, with the doors open, with low barriers for them to come in, then you get really, really meaningful innovation, I think.
Great. John, take us through Stryker's journey. And it's not only that great facility outside of Cork, but it's all around supply chain, but really that matters the most when patients see a difference in Stryker's products. Take us through that.
Yeah, sure. The key thing for us, I mean, at the end of the day, Stryker's mission, we say together with our customers, we are driven to make healthcare better. And when you think about making healthcare better and the impact additive manufacturing is having on that, we start with design. And essentially what additive does is it allows you to remove all the design constraints. So it's not about taking orthopedic implants that we used to cast and then machine and instead print them. It's about allowing a design engineer to work with a surgeon to meet an unmet clinical need and say, now that I can take those constraints off, I can design a product that I know these guys can print. So the portfolio that we have of 7 different products in the marketplace, predominantly in orthopedics with hip, knee, and spine, is really focused on that, on meeting needs that were previously unmet clinically, because now we can print these parts and there's no design constraints. And then supply chain-wise, think about that. If the supply chain starts with that design, the time to market is much faster. Getting a new product to market with additive is much faster than it ever was before. And then it leads to, as I said before, procedures that are much easier to do, so less instrumentation, less time on the table for the patient, faster recovery, and ultimately a better outcome for the patient.
And that example that we were talking about in the back in terms of cementless components for knees, take us through, how is that noticeable to both the doctor who, the provider who is purchasing from Stryker this component that's going to go into their patient?
Yeah, when you think about doing the knee procedures cementlessly, essentially if you just think about taking the knee apart and reconstructing it with an orthopedic implant, and absent additive manufacturing, you don't have that titanium base plate. So it's a much more invasive procedure. You're using a fair amount of bone cement to get that fixation that now we can get without bone cement. So you think about the amount of trauma for the patient at the surgical site significantly reduced, and you think about their recovery time significantly coming down. So you're taking cost out of the system, and you're making it much better for the patient to get back to a normal lifestyle, if you will, in a much more rapid fashion.
Great, so patients are noticing it, whether it's coming from Mayo, whether it's coming from the manufacturers. They're really noticing how additive is changing patient care. So let's go to the dark side now. All right, Jimmie, what's problematic in setting up? You've been doing this for a number of years for GE and the Advanced Manufacturing Center. What's been the toughest part of getting additive up off the ground?
Sure. I think the number one thing is setting the right expectations. I can go in front of any engineer and get them excited about additive in 5 minutes. That's the easy part. As soon as they realize it's not the Star Trek replicator that's going to solve all their problems, they go away. And what happens is, as intriguing as it is, they view it as risk, right? And that's the first journey. Risk equals, potential delay to my product development. Delay to product development means business risk, so it's just that cycle you got to get them out of. So you quickly have to snap them into, what it really can do. And then, once they see that, it's actually an exciting time to be an engineer again. I was an engineer a decade ago, and really what disappointed me was I was mostly working with suppliers to get parts in. Right? And that wasn't my vision of being an engineer through years of school. This gets engineers back to the first principle. So you have to show them that. And then there's this part of how you set up your team with expectation around failure. I talk a lot about failure with my team. You have to get engineers comfortable with failing. And the beauty of additive is you could fail a lot, and you will. All right? It happens every time. No one prints the first part and works perfectly. So you have to help them with understanding that. You have to help their leadership understand that, and it's a culture change. So we've been through this with many different engineering teams. I have some that are, I would call in high school now, and I have some teams that are still in grade school. But you have to go through that journey and figure it out.
Great. Jay, barriers in the hospital.
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers in the hospital. So one of them, we don't have to, well, for what we were doing, we have the greatest design on the planet. It's all in there. It's amazing that we function when we wake up in the morning. So for us, it was more, there are several logistical things and there are several bottlenecks that have to happen, that have to fall for us to become mainstream. One is we take images from the scanner. So most 3D printing in medicine starts at the 3D printer, where we said we have to start at the radiology protocol to say we need to design protocols specific for the next step in medical additive, which was segmentation. If you want to create a device that fits on whatever, a knee, a jaw, you have to segment out what data or what anatomy you want out of that scan. And that software it's robust, it's powerful, it's great. There's even FDA approved software now through Materialize. but it's made for engineers. It's not made for product efficiency for what we want to do. So we've worked with the radiology side. Now we have to work on the segmentation side using things like machine learning and creating gold standard data so that we don't have any hands on the segmentation, that the bones segment themselves. The next step is then getting that ready to the printer. And we had to go through a lot of quality assurance steps to say, well, I'm going to hand this to a surgeon who's going to trust me that this tumor is where it is, this blood vessel is where it is, this nerve is where it is. He trusts me as his radiologist, but now I have to trust that machine to print it accurately. So there's a lot we had to learn from the manufacturing community, which we did at Rapid each year. What's a coupon? How do you, all these things that people in manufacturing know, we didn't know. We had to learn that. And then uptime of the printers, people fly into Mayo from around the world. We service about 140 countries last year. They come on Monday. Sometimes they're in the OR on Thursday. We have surgeons that come to us, say, I'm going to take out a large tumor. Can you print me an adult pelvis in a day? An adult pelvis on some printers takes 3 days to print. So speed of printing. And then we had to put all these things inside of a hospital where patients were. So powders, polymers, lye baths, all the ventilation and negative pressure. So we had to talk to facilities and work through a facilities plan. We had to create an IT infrastructure. And then once we do that locally, that's great, but all patients don't come to Mayo Clinic. So we had to design a national infrastructure, build a medical journal, start a medical society, educate doctors globally about this, work with the FDA and co-sponsor regulatory meetings and guidance documents with the FDA, get it to where this stuff is in our radiology IT system. All of those things have to be overcome and are being overcome, but they're definitely challenges.
So it's a journey, and John, I know...
It's a journey, and when I give talks, people see Mayo Clinic, 3D printing, all the ways we use it, but I think that picture of the iceberg was a great picture because you don't see all the frustration and hard work and challenges and build failures and things below the surface. But because it was so clinically useful, and like you said, you're partnering with people to make the products better, and we're not going to do it all. We certainly partner with medical device companies because we realize we're not going to manufacture the types of things that Stryker is, but we want to work with them to say these are some of our problems, and the device companies actually are very willing to work with us and help solve some of those problems.
Yeah, I think the key thing, Scott, is that for us it's design, right? It's not about the ability to print the parts. It's getting designers to think differently without constraints, because if you just print what you used to machine, you may save some cost, you may take some lead time out, but you're not going to be, it's not game changing. When designers can think differently without constraints, when they have that Autobahn moment that Jason spoke about earlier, and you can see when that happens, then they begin to really get it, and that's when additive can really take off. And until it does, you've got to incubate it, protect it from the rest of your business model, we found, and then find a workforce. You have to grow your own workforce that's able to think that way, design that way, and then ultimately have your additive manufacturing expertise. They're not out there today, so you have to find a way to grow your own.
Right, and for Stryker, it's been a fairly long journey to get to this point where there's this amazing facility outside of Cork, and I think you guys had to generate the wave, not just catch it. So how tough was that to begin to build this into Stryker?
It was a challenge, but I would tell you that Stryker's been a growth company forever. And again, when you go back to our core of making healthcare better, as soon as we could connect the technology to the ability to make healthcare better, for the surgeon provider, for the patient on the table, we had the full support of the company to continue to invest in the technology, and we've made great strides in that area. But it really required a leap of faith to say, we're going to invest in this, we're going to figure out the process, and ultimately it will enable us to have better patient outcomes, to design products and commercialize them, to do things that can't be done today. But it's been a long journey since 2001, and we can only imagine how fast that journey goes from here forward.
I would echo that, because if someone came to me in the beginning and said, show me the reduced OR times that you're going to have from doing a two-man jaw resection or something, we're not funding it unless you show me that. We would have never made the meaningful innovation that we made over the years. If someone said, where are you going to be? I need to know where you're going to be in 5 years. Well, you saw from the technology advancements, I would have had no idea where we were in 5 years ago. But the institution as a whole saw its value growing and saw improvements in patient care. And then they said, okay, we're going to invest in this, and we're going to allow very talented people who are already good at what they do to use this tool to get better. And I think that sort of faith in us and that sort of support from the institution led to amazing patient care differences. And And part of the difficulty in other healthcare institutions is they want the numbers first.
Right.
Show me the cost savings, show me the dollars, and then I'll invest in it. And I think that's really short-sighted in healthcare.
Yep. I see the same thing. Matter of fact, we created a milestone process that forces us not to talk about the business case on day one. Matter of fact, not even for the first 2 milestones, because it will kill innovation. So totally would echo same comment.
Right, so it's that leap of faith that this is going to provide solutions that will make a difference in healthcare.
Absolutely.
That's great. So on a final thought in the last moment and a half that we have, 3D printing and additive manufacturing is fundamentally going from digital to the physical. And I see a horse race happening across digital innovations. You mentioned some in terms of AI segmentation, Jay, and what do you guys see in that horse race between those two technologies? Who's winning, and where do we have to really double down on our investment? What's the biggest obstacle on those two sides?
All right.
Jimmie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll start. I think the challenge that they have in the clinical environment is a little bit different than printing parts in the manufacturing world. I would say this is an exciting time. I mean, you look how much software has grown, computing power has grown. Nothing has changed this much in the physical world in decades. I mean, that's my view of it. So now I think it's just how do we get the physical world caught up to that, and additive is a clear enabler for it. Great.
John?
I think for us, the key thing is, remember, we announced our collaboration with GE less than a year ago. I mean, Mohammed and I at the GE Minds and Machines event last June began this collaboration, and it's been tremendous. So the progress we've made so far in that year of working together, we have high expectations that the continued work on the machine side, we've known Concept Laser for years and years, but as GE's gotten involved and really optimizing process parameters of the machines, that's going to take lead time out again, bring time to market down. So we're really confident that this relationship, the collaboration we have, is going to help us even speed up this additive manufacturing journey that we're on.
And I'd say, if you ask people today, who is the trusted healthcare leader in 3D printing? Those of us in the medical 3D printing world know, we know that Stryker is doing additive manufacturing. We know that 3D Systems is doing a lot of additive manufacturing, but there's no clear answer to that.
Right.
If you want to get a 3D printed patient-specific model for simulation or pre-surgical guidance, there's no one company that the physicians or anywhere in the healthcare institution can look to. And I think we need a turnkey solution that starts from the very beginning of the workflow, at the radiology protocols, through machine learning, through segmentation, to printers that actually print faster in full color with materials that feel like actual human organs. And then we'll get to a place where it can be, rolled out across the country.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank all three of you, Jimmie, Jay, John. Thanks for joining us. And
thank you for having us.
Great. All right. Thank you.